Hey everyone, this is My Project Hell, in case you were wondering, and I'm Kelly Schockler, and for the next 20 minutes, we're going to do our part to offer some sensible solutions for some of those aggravating project problems we all run into at some point. And Paul and I are going to keep it down to earth and real for you.
That's right. And I'm Paul Thompson. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. In this episode, we're going to take our hot topic, into a deep dive. So we encourage you guys to join in the conversation, right? Use the chat to share your thoughts and ideas as we go through this episode. And if you do have anything specific for Kelly and I, throw those in the Q&A. But for now, let's see where we want to go with this hot topic. Kelly?
Okay, well, you got me thinking about margaritas and nachos now. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, thank you. So for this episode today, Paul and I figured it would be a great time to talk about dealing with ambiguity, because we know that being able to navigate through ambiguity is one of the more important competencies that a project manager needs to master. Without having that ability to move through projects and move people through that uncertain scope and schedule and budget and other things, we know what the outcome will be. It's usually thrash and burn, as I like to call it. So I think this is more important than ever too, because truth be told, the environments that most of us are operating in as PMs these days, they're not getting less complex. We're finding the opposite to be true. With the rapid rate of technological advances, the constantly changing government regulations, and then now we've got a high rate of turnover in company resources. And this is making our project environments more uncertain than ever. So the thing is, navigating ambiguity, it can be difficult, I think, no matter if you're a newbie PM, a seasoned PM. I think it can be difficult no matter where you're at in your career. So I think the trick is getting a few tried and true solutions that work, having a few tricks up your sleeve to move you through and take projects forward and really be able to lean on those tried and true tricks. So the question is, how do we as project managers get comfortable when things are up in the air, when situations are in flux? How can we help others on our team operate effectively when we've got all that pressure, that uncertainty, and things are changing? And how do we bring that sense of calm to the chaos, Paul? That's the question. What are the things we need to be paying attention to when we're trying to cut through the ambiguity?
Well, and that's a good point, right? How do you know that you're kind of in it, right? How do you know that others are stuck or
Yeah, what does that look like? When we talk about that
exactly.
for a minute?
Exactly. And one of the things I've always used to kind of give me that, guidepost as to how everybody's doing with it is what I like to call analysis paralysis, right? You've probably seen it on projects 100 times. They just don't make the decision, oh, we just need one more piece of data, or, have you thought about this? And that can be really frustrating. I've seen it at the analyst level. I've also seen it at senior leadership's level. Have you ever been in a meeting where the same topic and the same discussion just keeps coming up, even though you thought you had a decision, right? That's it's painful.
It is, to have the same things come up and having that feeling that you're lost, nobody knows quite where to go, and you as the PM are feeling this intense pressure that I got to lead and dig us out of this because I'm the PM. So, how do I do that without the team going into this continual kind of thrash cycle of we need more information, we need more information, we can't move forward without this,
Yep.
you know?
That's
So
a good point.
how do you get out of analysis paralysis?
Oh, so one of the tools that we've found works really well are what we call guiding principles. And guiding principles, if you're not familiar, come down from senior leadership, and they are sort of those guardrails on the project, right? if you need to make decisions, you should be able to look to these and they're going to tell you, well, here's kind of how leadership wants to encourage you to go. Some guiding principles that we've used in the past that have come down when we do migrations, a like for like migration. So if somebody gets stuck saying, well, I could do it a couple of different ways, we can always turn back and go, well, it's a like for like migration. So let's not spend a lot of time looking at all the side cases. Here's where we need to go. And in fact, one of the companies that we worked for, they even knew they had analysis paralysis constantly. So their guiding principle was make a decision with the best information you have and move on. That was what
Yeah.
senior leadership said to us.
It's so
And
hard sometimes, easier said than done, you know?
it really can be, right? How do you do that, right? How do you get people unstuck, even when they know they've got permission?
Okay, so in trying to avoid this analysis paralysis, I think seeing what you have in front of you, what do you have to work with? So documenting assumptions, scope, requirements, what else? What do
Mm-hmm.
we need to be looking at to start cutting through the noise?
Well, I think you hit three of my favorites, right? Assumptions list. You're not going to have all the data, but you're going to have some pretty good ideas of what the data might say. And just couching your decisions, right? We're going to choose to do X based on our assumption of A, B, and C, and line those out, right? And then document that in your assumptions list and keep it. Because sure, if it turns out to be wrong and somebody goes, you know, how the hell did we get here? We made we made a decision. These were the assumptions. Now let's course correct. So I think kind of putting those assumptions and saying them out loud gives you a lot of power to move forward there. I think you also said it when you talked about scope, right? What's in and what's out. And start with big chunks, right? When we move a data center, what's in scope? Anything on the data center floor. What's out of scope? Anything not on the data center floor. That right there cuts half of everything out. And then you can start to deal with more and more granularity as you go. But just being able to say that and then keep coming back to it, right? When somebody goes, well, what about this? You know, what about this piece of equipment? Is it on the data center floor? No, it's out. So we like to kind of attack it that way, from kind of that big picture down to the pebble size information.
Yeah, that's good. That boulder, rock, pebble
Yeah.
idea. Another thing that I like to use is my stakeholder interviews to get information from different stakeholders, sometimes separately, sometimes together. But I think it's about being able to ask the right questions of your
Mhm.
stakeholder and having a list of questions that you want to ask them. You know, what do you see is the biggest hurdle to success here, and finding out individual agendas, because they all have individual agendas. So that adds to the ambiguity, because like which one's right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I can see where those interviews help. Now, so who generally gets interviewed in this case?
So for me, I identify key stakeholders in my stakeholder analysis, and using the influence interest grid approach, and really looking at those key stakeholders who hold a lot of influence and interest in the project, and finding out where they're at, but not to the detriment of finding out where a few of the others are too. It's good to go and
Mhm.
see those who do have a lot of influence but maybe not a lot of interest. Where are they at, and what do they know? That's what you're finding out. What do they know that you need in order to define the project and cut through the ambiguity?
Sure. Sure. Do you find that a lot of times those that have a lot of influence really aren't necessarily high on the org chart or called out on the org chart?
Sometimes, yeah, right. I think we've all seen those people who maybe aren't executive leaders, or at a level where you be very influential, but they still wield a great deal of power on resources and, at the
Mhm.
management level.
Yeah. I know for a lot of my IT work, that might be one of those engineers that's really sharp, really gets it, right? And everybody keeps turning to them to ask, is this the way we really want to go? Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't have them on your side, it's not gonna
Subject
go.
matter experts with a lot of time in and a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
The other document that you mentioned that I like using is requirements. And oftentimes I started out in software development, so I think of requirements, or if you're into agile, you've got stories and epics or whatever. But all of that is great, but you need to start somewhere. And again, we're talking about getting the ambiguity out. So the way we've done it on a couple of things is just start again, kind of like scope, right? Big chunks of requirement, but then add, is it a must have, a nice to have, or just a wish list kind of thing. So then you can kind of iterate through those without spending a lot of time and trying to uncover all the information on the nice to have stuff. Let's focus on the must haves, right?
Yeah.
So data center must have, right? Probably need to have a location to move to. All right, so let's go find that first. And then what are the must haves in there, right? There's capacity, there's power, pop, ping, those types of things. But those again can kind of focus down and slowly whittle away with that ambiguity. Well,
What's next, Paul?
that's an awkward silence.
Yeah, those that you love, those awkward silences. Wonder
I
if there's a
do.
way we can use that in dealing with ambiguity.
Well, and you're not far off, right? Ask your question and your interviews, right? And then let the question sit there for a minute. Somebody that has information will start to come forward and fill the space and start to answer things that you may not have even asked, just giving
Right.
you additional information. Because I had one piece of advice when I was starting out. Customers will give you anything you ask for and nothing else, unless you give them an opportunity, right? So give them the opportunity. But now you've talked a lot in the past about like design thinking. Are there tools there that can help with some of this ambiguity and vetting it out?
I think so. I'm glad you brought that up. It's one of my favorite topics right now. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term design thinking, it's a method that employs a set of methods and mindsets, and it promotes human centered approaches to problem solving and innovation. And it really engages the ideas and the experience from the whole team. So, I know sometimes I've fallen into this trap where I try to solve the problem on my own. And a lot of PMs will go in trying to solve problems and cut through ambiguity on their own. And that going inward and taking on that whole responsibility for trying to untangle or unfog the situation, it is rarely useful. That idea of an army of one, it just doesn't do a lot toward getting toward the finish line. And and that's a tragedy because it really limits the consideration of all that's possible. It narrows the solution set to only what you know or what I know. So, the beautiful thing about design thinking is that it harnesses the experience and the ideas from the whole team. It encourages problem solving and critical thinking, which is what you need when you're wayfinding yourself through the ambiguity. So, one way that I've used design thinking to cut through ambiguous situations is where let's go back to scope. We're unclear about scope. And what I've done is focus. I'll take a 1 hour design thinking based session, get the whole project team focused on scope, and use it as a way to identify all the attributes, the deliverables, the information that the whole group has about the project scope. So, in the example I'm thinking of, I was in a team that was dispersed and remote. So I needed to use Zoom, and I used a tool called Mural, a whiteboard tool there. And in the first 30 minutes of that meeting, we had at least 35, 40 elements identified. We had more information than what I had believed was out there. And with those identified elements, we were able to consolidate the information and formulate our scope parameters within that hour. And then we had something viable to go back to the customer to present. Well, but first we had to go to the governance group, but we had it shaped and we had it coherent, and we were able to get validation and sign off and then move on to customer validation and sign off. And that's just one simple way that design thinking can help when
Mhm.
you just don't know which end is up.
Now, is so I know we're focused on ambiguity, but I like hearing about the design thinking capabilities and that. Is that something that's hard for project managers to really get into and master, or um, do they have to have a whole sense of the entire design thinking? Can they
Not
do
at all.
pieces of
There's
it?
some really simple processes, many of which some of you out there who are listening and in our audience today have probably already used. When you're doing a retrospective, what worked, what didn't, what we need to improve on, that's a design thinking method. So this stuff's been around for a while. We just haven't leveraged it in and all the power that it holds to help problem solve. I think because of some of these fixed mindsets that we get in, where we have to fix it ourselves, or just me, myself, and I, right? So definitely just learning a couple of these tools, and at basic knowing how to run a session where you're pulling all the ideas from the group collectively and organizing them and making sense of the situation.
So it's about facilitation
Hmm.
and in collaboration.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I know with ambiguity, I think one of the things that certainly was hard for me at first, and it's kind of what you've been touching on, right? That army of one. I need to solve it. I got a lot, I got a lot further in my career once I became comfortable that, you know what, there's a lot of things here that are kind of squishy. They're going to firm up. They're just not going to firm up right now, right? And I kind of got to take that step on the squishy ground to find out where the next firm piece is. And along the way, if I'm smart and I didn't, I'm going to pull in the other people to really help firm up that growth, that ground with the information that's needed, right? And
Yeah.
it's like your design thinking, right? You start to pull in the experts and the SMEs, and once you start doing that and realizing you can let go of having to have all the answers, it
Yeah.
certainly helped me.
Being comfortable that you don't know what you don't know, but you can't stay in that. Be comfortable with it and
Mhm.
then figure out how you're going to get into knowing,
Yeah.
right?
We used to call it a rolling wave, right? That wave is coming, and when it's back here, you can see what's right here, but it's going to come all the way. And each time as that wave goes through, you get more and more information as it moves forward. And so just kind of focus on what's the next couple of steps.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yep. So we've covered a lot of ground here in the last 15 minutes. I think, to recap, number one, avoid that analysis paralysis trap. You will never know everything, just like Paul
Yeah.
was talking about with the wave. You've got to figure out how to take steps based on what you have in front of you. And then another thing we think is important for fending off ambiguity is to document what you know. What you have is a great start, and you always have something. And one way to do that is using a design thinking method to leverage the hive mind, as they call it, to figure out what you don't know. So yeah, you don't have to sweat it out alone. Pull in others who have those bits and pieces of knowledge that can help you start pulling the puzzle together. So these are just a few ways that you can bring that sense of calm as the PM into ambiguous situations when it feels like there's nothing to find and no one knows quite where to go for the answers. And you taking action is the very thing that's going to bring that calm and comfort to the team and to the other stakeholders. And you're going to start building that trust in those tense situations. Now, before we sign off from this episode of My Project Hell, Paul and I want to encourage you, please reach out to us. We've got an email address, myprojecthell@gmail.com. And if you'd like to join us on a future episode and let us join you in troubleshooting your own Project Hell, we're always looking for PMs to join us and pay it forward to the PM troops by helping others learn from your situation. So please reach out to us.
That's right. And I hope you guys had fun. I know Kelly and I enjoyed doing this show. Catch any of our replays over on our YouTube channel. And you can always reach out and get a free 30-minute consultation from Kelly or I. Just go over to our website, right? myprojecthell.com. And you'll find all sorts of good information there and how to sign up for being in Coach's Corner. All right. Thank you all.
Yep, we've got some great things lined up for you in the next couple months. So tune in, and you definitely don't want to miss the next one, where we're going to talk about ready, set, go, best practices for starting a project. We'll see you next time. Thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you.